It's time now for weather with Nebraska Extension Ag Climatologist and Market Journal Chief Meteorologist Al Dutcher. Al, I hope you're having a wonderful start to your holiday season. What are we going to be discussing today?
Well, Bill, I hope you had a happy holiday as with all the folks out there. Hopefully it was safe and relaxing. Since the university is shut down, I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to get you updated on the latest La Niña information, as it has been an important player not only in our fall weather pattern, but will likely drive our winter and our spring patterns. And the biggest question is, will we start to see some relief from this precipitation deficit, particularly across the western half of the state, where we've been enduring 6 months almost of this dry conditions, and we're about in the 3 to 4 month stage across some of the later developing areas of the state, south central and southeast Nebraska. Well, here is the latest signature from the La Niña pattern. And basically what we're showing here is the deviations from normal and sea surface temperature. So the blues indicate that we're below normal sea surface temperature wise, and the more intense they are, the stronger the cold is in terms of departures from normal. And generally what ends up happening is the pressure patterns that form during La Niña are actually just the normal patterns that strengthen, so we get a lot quicker winds moving across the surface. That evacuates that surface toward the west, and the cold upwelling waters come in, replace it. There's just not as quick enough time for the solar radiation to warm that surface as it would under normal pressure patterns. Furthermore, we're watching the Gulf of Alaska. That's been fairly active the last few weeks, as we've seen some series of storms moving into the Pacific Northwest, and we've had more of a troughing pattern across the western United States than we had during the fall period, where it was dominated by high pressure. So we're watching this churning. The biggest question is, will this continue to churn, this low pressure system in the eastern Gulf of Alaska, and will it start to bring that cold upwelling water underneath of the surface, up to the surface, so it can be drawn down in and support the area across the central equatorial Pacific? Because this is very important as we look underneath of the water. The last big pulse of cold water is coming to the surface. It should be just about, this was from the 29th of November, it's starting to show up right at the surface in the eastern equatorial Pacific, and then it'll be drawn westward. In this place, we do have warm water below the surface. It's taken a lot of time to make its way eastward. So the biggest question is, can it overcome this blob in the central equatorial Pacific such that we'll start to see this warm water come up to the surface? If we look at the global hemispheric models of the summation of them, we can see that they all are pointing toward a bottoming out for the most part as we go into this 3 month period, and then we start to see a gradual warming trend. But there does get to be a fairly significant spread as we get out in toward the spring months. And if we look at the comparison between last month and this month in terms of the model projections, both are indicating a 95 to 100% probability this event will last through the winter period. Where the change is starting to occur is, in the November, it was a 65% probability that this event would last through the spring months. It's now been toned down to 50%. And a lot of that is because most majority of the models are showing that warming trend. But once again, it's that warm water underneath that will dictate whether or not this occurs. So the biggest question is the timing. Many of these models are moving up to a quicker demise of this event, although it doesn't appear that way to me based on underwater currents and, of course, the large signature profile. I suspect that this will last fairly much through the spring period. And here's the most important point. Even if it goes back into what we consider neutral, which is between 1/2 degree Celsius above or below normal, it still looks like the vast majority of models are keeping it on the cool side. So we'll look to see whether or not we get a redevelopment as we go into the summer period. That's the big uncertainty right now in terms of this forecast. But more importantly, we have seen a rather significant expansion of extreme drought conditions into western Nebraska and southwest Nebraska. And in fact, we've seen a filling in the sandhills from abnormally dry conditions to drought conditions. And looking at the outlooks, there's just not a lot of signs for above normal moisture this winter. So it's probably going to be spring before we start to see any significant relief. We're going to be dealing with this issue off and on all the way through the spring period. So we'll keep you updated as the season progresses. Stay tuned next week for our top 5 countdown of the weather events that I feel were most important to agriculture during 2020 within the state of Nebraska.